Have you ever, called yourself lazy because you just couldn't stick to one of those massive military-style morning routines?
Oh, yeah. The ones heavily promoted online.
Right, where you're supposed to wake up at, 4 a.m., run 10 miles, meditate for an hour, and then drink some aggressively green juice before the sun even comes up.
Yeah, it's exhausting just thinking about
It
it.
really is. So welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is episode 5 of our ongoing series on life optimization. And today we're unpacking this really fascinating stack of transcripts from lifestyle, language learning, and habit building sources.
And the mission today is really figuring out how to build routines we actually want to stick to, protect our energy, and avoid burnout.
Exactly. We're asking this fundamental question: what if laziness isn't your problem at all? What if what you're actually dealing with is a massive energy leak that you haven't even noticed?
That's exactly the right question to be asking here, because across all these sources, we're seeing this foundational misunderstanding of what time actually is and how we interact with it.
Without.
Well, we treat time like it's just this rigid sequence of hours on a clock. We think, I have 2 free hours this evening, so I should be able to learn a new language or write a novel.
Right, the math makes sense on paper.
Exactly, on paper. But time isn't the true currency of productivity. Energy is. I mean, if your internal battery is completely empty by 5 p.m., having 4 hours of free time is completely useless.
Because you're just staring at the wall anyway.
Right. You cannot extract any meaningful value from that time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if time isn't the bottleneck and energy is, then we really have to deconstruct why our current routines are failing so spectacularly.
We really do. We have to stop blaming laziness.
Yeah, and the sources use this incredibly vivid metaphor that honestly completely shifted how I view my own habits. They suggest we treat our bodies and our minds like an old house with a leaking roof,
Oh, I love that analogy.
right? And instead of doing the structural, difficult work to patch the roof, we just keep putting a bigger bucket under the drip.
Yep, just managing the symptoms.
Exactly. We throw espresso shots and painkillers at our exhaustion, we push through the mental fog, and we somehow expect our bodies to just perform flawlessly despite the chronic leaks.
And what's really fascinating here is how we mislabel our own biological signals. Like what we so quickly diagnose as a moral failing, oh, I'm just lazy, is biologically just severe depletion.
Or fear, right?
Yes. Fear manifesting as avoidance. When we look at a daunting task, we often suffer from analysis paralysis. But chemically, what's happening is your prefrontal cortex,
The logical part of the brain.
right, it gets completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of micro decisions required just to start. So the amygdala, your fear center, it just hits the panic button.
Wow. So you're basically exhausted before you even do anything.
You are literally burning through your mental bandwidth. You're exhausting your brain's glucose supply with all the what ifs before you've even typed a single word.
Okay.
So you aren't unmotivated. Your brain is frazzled and running on empty.
I want to push back on that a bit, though. I mean, it's really just depletion and not laziness. Why do we actively choose to do things that take time but yield zero results?
What do you mean?
If my brain is so exhausted and terrified of a task, why don't I just go to sleep? Why do I sit there and scroll on my phone for 3 hours when I know I have a deadline looming? Lying on the couch, scrolling, it feels like I'm resting my brain.
Well, it feels like rest because your physical body is immobile, but neurologically, it is the exact opposite of rest.
Really?
Yeah. This comes down to the critical distinction between true rest and escapism. When your prefrontal cortex is deeply overwhelmed, your brain is wired to seek out the path of least resistance to get a quick dopamine hit.
Ah, so the phone is just the easiest dopamine available.
Exactly. Doom scrolling isn't rest, it's a buffering state. You are feeding your brain novelty. Thousands of micro decisions, emotional spikes, new images every minute.
But you're never actually satisfying the brain.
Right. True rest activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows your body to actually repair. Escapism just pauses the act of stress while keeping your brain highly stimulated.
So the stress is just waiting for you.
Exactly. The heavy expectations are still sitting right there, draining your subconscious, waiting for you when you finally lock your phone screen.
Okay, that makes an uncomfortable amount of sense. The cognitive load is still running in the background, like leaving 20 tabs open on a web browser,
That's like a perfect way to put it.
which leads directly into what the sources call the quiet drain. If our real currency is energy, then these invisible leaks, doom scrolling, overthinking, chronic people pleasing, they're silently bankrupting us.
Oh, absolutely. They don't look dangerous in the moment.
Right. but they secretly squander our attention and leave us entirely emotionally bankrupt by, like, 3 p.m.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern world essentially forces our nervous systems into a perpetual reaction mode.
Reaction mode, meaning we're just constantly responding to things.
Exactly. Think about the biological sequence of events the moment you wake up and grab your phone. The second you open an email or a social app, your brain is instantly thrown into a chaotic meeting it didn't ask to attend.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You're suddenly processing a coworker's artificial emergency, a tragic global news headline, and, someone else's heavily filtered vacation photos.
All before you even brushed your teeth.
Right. And this spikes your cortisol, your stress hormone, within minutes of waking. You are reacting to the world's agenda, not choosing your own. And this is precisely why setting boundaries isn't just some self-care buzzword. It's a neurological shield.
A neurological shield. I really like that. Because living without boundaries, it's practically like owning a house with no doors.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Anyone can just walk right in, sit on your couch, eat your snacks,
Yeah.
and they don't even bother to take off their shoes.
Right. It's a total invasion of your space.
Yeah. But let's get practical for a second. Because having doors is great in theory, but in reality, if my boss emails me at 7 p.m. or a friend is having a crisis, I can't just put up a concrete wall and ignore them.
No, you can't. That's a really common concern.
So how do we actually protect our energy without isolating ourselves or getting fired?
Well, it requires practicing the art of the soft no. We often mistake boundaries for aggressive confrontation, but a boundary is really just a filtration system.
So what does a soft no sound like?
It's about pacing and triage. It sounds like, hey, I'd love to help you sort this out, but I won't have the bandwidth until tomorrow morning. Or let me get back to you on that once I finish my current priority.
Oh, I see. You're not shutting them out. You're just delaying the reaction.
Exactly. The underlying truth the sources emphasize is that energy is a zero-sum game on any given day. Saying an automatic yes to someone else's minor emergency when you're depleted means you're actively saying no to your own well-being.
Like the classic secure your own oxygen mask first rule.
Precisely. If you don't do that, you eventually have nothing left to give anyone anyway.
Okay, so assuming we've managed to put the doors back on the house and we've stopped the most egregious energy leaks, how do we actually start building the routines we want?
Well, the typical advice is just to try harder next time.
Right. But the sources take a totally different angle. They argue that to avoid quitting by Wednesday, you have to lower the bars so drastically that you literally cannot fail.
They do?
And I'll admit, my initial reaction to this was total skepticism. Like, it sounds like a recipe for settling for mediocrity.
It sounds counterintuitive because we're culturally conditioned to celebrate massive overnight transformations. But biologically, the brain hates sudden massive change.
It does.
Yes, it registers massive change as a threat. And this is where the 1% rule and the no-zero rule come into play. If you want to build a sustainable habit, you do not aim for the mountain peak on day one.
You aim for what the sources call a minimum honest day.
Exactly. I love that term. Think of this baseline as your seatbelt energy.
Seatbelt energy.
Yeah. Wearing a seatbelt doesn't make the car ride fancy or glamorous, but it keeps you secure when the road gets chaotic. A minimum honest day is that one tiny, non-negotiable action you commit to doing, regardless of how catastrophic the day gets.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If I tell myself my goal is to work out, and my minimum honest day is, like, just 2 minutes of stretching, isn't that useless?
It feels useless.
Yeah.
2 minutes of stretching isn't going to make me fit. I mean, it feels almost like I'm tricking myself.
Well, you are tricking yourself, but for a very specific neurological purpose. The goal of those 2 minutes isn't physical fitness, it's neuroplasticity.
So rewiring the brain.
Right. The basal ganglia, the part of your brain responsible for habit formation, it doesn't care about the intensity of the workout. It only cares about the repetition of the sequence.
So you're just laying down the tracks.
Exactly. You are laying down the neural pathway. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. The goal is never to have the most rigorous, Instagram-worthy routine. The goal is the most sustainable one.
Because doing a 10-minute walk every single day changes your physiology way more than a 1-hour grueling workout that you quit after 2 weeks.
100%.
That concept of shrinking the habit really shifts the paradigm. Instead of overhauling your entire diet and throwing out everything in your pantry, which, like you said, spikes that cortisol and fear, You use the plate piece rule.
Right, I really like that rule.
Yeah, you don't take anything away. You just add one healthy thing, like a handful of greens. Or there's the water plus walk rule. You could commit to drinking 1 glass of water and walking for 10 minutes.
Keeping it incredibly simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds me of pushing a really heavy shopping cart. That very first push requires maximum torque. It takes all your effort just to overcome inertia.
Yes, getting it moving is the hardest part.
But once the cart is rolling, momentum takes over. And keeping it moving takes a fraction of the energy.
Precisely. You're overcoming cognitive friction. And to understand the mechanics of how these micro habits physically and permanently alter our behavior, we have to look at the habit loop.
Right, the habit loop. I know you listening are probably familiar with this, the cue, the routine, and the reward. We've all read the textbooks on that.
Oh, definitely.
But the sources highlight a specific trap we all fall into here. We usually try to annihilate the entire loop through sheer willpower, which never works.
It fails because you can't easily extinguish a neurological craving. The cue and the reward are hardwired.
So you can't just delete them.
No. If Friday night is your cue, and a massive dopamine hit of relaxation is your reward, your brain expects that payoff. If your old routine was eating junk food on the couch, you can't just delete the routine and leave a void.
The brain will rebel.
Exactly. The trap is fighting the loop instead of exploiting it. You have to keep the cue, and you must deliver a reward, but you swap the routine in the middle.
So, like, Friday night arrives, and instead you take a gentle walk listening to a podcast.
Yes. Your brain still gets the relaxation and the dopamine it was promised. It's just delivered through a healthier pathway.
And speaking of exploiting the brain's quirks, the sources dive into the Zeigarnik effect, which I found so fascinating.
Oh, it's a great psychological trick.
It's this phenomenon where the human brain absolutely hates leaving a task unfinished. If you wanted to write a massive report but you're procrastinating, the trick is to force yourself to open the document and type just one single sentence.
Just one.
But why does the brain care so much about that one sentence? Why doesn't it just say, cool, one sentence done, back to scrolling?
Because of how our working memory operates, when you begin a task, your brain opens a cognitive loop. It holds that task in its active RAM.
Oh, like a computer.
Exactly. And an unfinished task creates cognitive dissonance. It literally itches in your brain. The brain wants to close the loop to free up that working memory.
So by writing just one sentence?
You activate the Zeigarnik effect. You bypass the amygdala's fear of the massive project, and you trigger the brain's natural compulsion for completion. It actually becomes harder not to write the second sentence than it was to write the first.
Okay, that makes sense for overcoming procrastination on a project. But what about the days when the friction is internal, when my motivation is absolutely zero?
Yeah, the tough days.
Right. Like, I don't care about the Zeigarnik effect, I don't care about momentum, I just don't want to do it. How do you start the cart rolling then?
This raises an important question, and it requires accepting a very hard truth about human psychology. Motivation follows action, not the other way around.
Wait, really? Because our entire culture has this backwards.
Completely backwards. We sit around waiting to feel a surge of inspiration before we attempt to change our behavior.
Right.
But neuroscience dictates that neurons that fire together wire together.
So you don't need to feel ready.
No. The feeling of readiness is a luxury, not a prerequisite. You do not need to feel motivated to take a microaction. The moment you force that tiny 2-minute action, you signal to your brain that a new pattern is forming.
And then the motivation kicks in.
Exactly. The brain responds to the physical movement by releasing the neurochemicals that generate motivation after the fact.
It's exactly like starting a campfire.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You would never stand out in the woods shivering, staring at a pile of wood, waiting to feel the warmth of the fire before you decide to strike the match.
Yeah, you'd freeze.
You have to strike the match first, you endure the cold, you build the fire, and then the warmth comes as a byproduct of your action. You take the action, and then you get the motivation.
That is a perfect analogy. You are the architect of your future patterns, but you have to be willing to lay the first brick in the cold.
Wow.
And to protect this newly rewired brain, to sustain all this hard-won momentum without leaking energy again, we have to safeguard the two most vulnerable transition periods of our day: how we wake up and how we go to sleep.
The mornings. I have to laugh at how brutally we treat ourselves in the mornings. We turn them into these high-stakes military boot camps.
We really do.
We force ourselves awake at 5 a.m. We're chronically sleep-deprived. We're weirdly angry at our oatmeal.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up feeling like an absolute failure by 7 a.m. because we didn't achieve a state of perfect zen. It's a manufactured crisis.
It is a crisis because a routine built on punishment triggers the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response.
So you're starting the day stressed.
You're starting your day bathed in stress hormones. A routine built on punishment will never endure. Instead, the sources advocate for soft rituals.
Soft rituals, what does that look like?
The philosophy is simple. Don't crash into your day. Let yourself arrive. Drink a glass of water. Look out a window for 60 seconds to let natural light reset your circadian rhythm.
Just simple things.
Very simple. And whatever you do, do not look at your phone immediately. Give your autonomic nervous system a moment of normal, quiet human existence before you willingly enter battle mode with the world.
Let yourself arrive. I think we all desperately need permission to do just that. But I want to look at the other end of the day, too.
The evenings.
Yeah, because I feel like by the time the evening rolls around, my doors are blown off, my roof is leaking, and I just collapse onto the couch, turn on the TV, and scroll until I literally drop the phone on my face.
Yeah, that's incredibly common. But what you're describing is the crucial distinction between winding down and fading out.
Oh, fading out. That sounds accurate.
Zoning out on your phone while a show plays in the background isn't giving your brain closure. You are just fading out from sheer exhaustion while still bombarding your visual cortex with blue light and data.
So I'm not actually winding down.
No. What your biology actually requires is a restorative closing ritual. It signals to your nervous system that it is safe to shift from sympathetic drive to parasympathetic rest.
And that doesn't have to be some complicated spa routine, right?
Not at all. It can just be dimming the overhead lights, making a cup of caffeine-free tea, or reading a physical book for 10 minutes. Without a deliberate closing ritual, your nervous system never receives the signal that the hunt is over.
That you're actually safe.
Right. That you're safe and that it can finally power down.
And if your nervous system never gets the signal that the day is over, you wake up the next morning feeling totally exhausted all over again.
And the cycle of the leaky roof continues.
Man.
Which brings us to one of the most profound quotes from the source material. Discipline is love in a serious form.
Discipline is love in a serious form.
Yes, because we have culturally equated discipline with restriction, rigidity, punishment. But true discipline isn't about hurting yourself today to be better tomorrow.
What is it then?
It is simply how you care for your future self before that future arrives. It's preparing the environment so that tomorrow's version of you has a slightly easier time navigating the world.
That completely reframes the entire concept of habit building.
It changes everything.
It really does. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means that escaping the cycle of feeling lazy is never going to be about conjuring sudden superhuman leaps of willpower.
No, absolutely not.
It's about recognizing that your energy is finite and precious.
Yeah.
It's about putting doors on your house to stop the quiet drains of reaction mode.
And shrinking those habits.
Right. Trusting that if you shrink the habit down to a ridiculous microaction, you will physically rewire your brain's pathways.
Yeah.
You do not have to completely overhaul your entire life today. You just have to be willing to fall forward.
And falling forward implies a lack of perfection. It means you will still stumble, your boundaries will sometimes fail, and you will have messy days.
But the baseline keeps you safe.
Exactly. Your minimum honest day ensures you are always landing slightly closer to the life you actually want to be living.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the architecture of our routines, I want to leave you with a slightly different thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about how these habits change you. But think about the ripple effect.
Ooh, the ripple effect.
Yeah. If you stop leaking energy, if you stop operating from a place of frantic, cortisol-driven reaction mode and start moving with calm momentum, what does that do to the people around you?
That's a great question.
Does patching the leaks in your own roof subconsciously give your family, your friends, and your coworkers the permission to drop their own frantic pacing?
It definitely changes the dynamic in a room.
It really does. Because if building a routine is ultimately just a series of promises to your future self, it might also be a quiet gift to everyone who shares your space. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take a breath, let yourself arrive, and we will see you next time.